I firstly want to observe that, having stated that the business of this meeting of the Seanad was solely concerned with the government's bill, you yourself then breached it by making remarks about Clifton. I don't agree with some of what you said, and I don't think it is the function of the chair to make remarks of that kind, and I don't think it was the function of the Ceann Comhairle to make far more trenchant remarks in his chamber. And I'm just saying, if we are here, excuse me, Cahill, if we are here to discuss one item only, this bill and the order of business relating to it today, you yourself led off by breaching that. So just remember that. It is not your function to talk about commissioners or judges from that seat. Not at all.
Can I make this point?
I'm making the point. Senator, it is none of your business to talk about judges
Senator,
and commissioners from that seat on this occasion.
In relation to the point you've raised, that issue will obviously be coming before CPP, as you are aware, right? And it is about the orderly running of this House, right? Yes. And that is the function of the chair.
Yes, and it's not your function. It is not your function to. It is not your function. It is not your function to speak about judges or commissioners on this occasion. It is not your function. You're an impartial chairman, and it is not your function to make pronouncements of that kind.
To the order of business?
Yes, I'm just pointing out that if the order of business is to be adhered to, you should do it yourself. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that I do not believe that the measure before us is of such urgency that it can only be dealt with in one day. And I do not believe that we should be in a position that there'll be pressure on us now not to call votes because of the cumbersome nature of votes being called.
Senator, as you are well aware, I attempted to get agreement from everybody that there would be no votes yesterday, and I outlined it specifically to you and to others.
I'm not talking about yesterday.
To others that the reason we could not have votes is there was no agreement in this House in relation to taking votes in the Seanad chamber. And I
am not talking about yesterday. I'm talking about today, and I'm talking about whether this bill is of sufficient urgency to justify having all stages dealt with today, putting us under pressure not to call votes on amendments, etc., in order to rush the thing through. And that's the point I'm making. I'm opposed to the idea that this bill needs to be rushed through in one day. I think the measures in it, some of them are good and some of them are excessive, and some of them need to be amended, but there's no need for us to rush it through. This is not an emergency. It's in my view anyway, and I may be in a minority in this, it is not a matter of tremendous urgency that the particular powers to close pubs in circumstances which are envisaged by this bill, either temporarily or for longer periods, must be rushed through without adequate consideration. And I want to say this in relation to it, Chairman. We are supposed to be a revising chamber. We are supposed to be a chamber that looks carefully at legislation that comes before us. And it's simply not acceptable that this House is reduced to the state of a rubber stamp. And if I fully accept that the staff of the Houses of the Oireachtas are doing their level best to marry the idea of public health guidelines to the sitting arrangements of these Houses, and I fully accept that there are pressure points and difficulties involved in both. But I do want to say this. There is, and I'll be raising it at the CPP later, there is the Mansion House around the corner, which in my youth could accommodate 2,000 or 3,000 people at an Ardèche, and certainly could.
That is not relevant to the arrangements.
Sorry, it is relevant because
it's a matter for CPP.
It's not, Chairman.
In relation to the order.
It's relevant.
We had a discussion in relation to the arrangements.
Would you allow me speak? Would you allow me speak and stop interrupting me, please?
And we could not. I could not get agreement from you and from others to sit yesterday and today.
Sorry, I'm not talking about yesterday. I'm talking about today.
And then we could have a proper order of business today. There wouldn't be the rush, and we could have votes tomorrow and today. Wouldn't that solve it if we met on Friday?
To put an amendment to the order of business in relation to the proposals outlined.
Beg your pardon?
If you want to put an amendment in relation to the proposals outlined, you're free to do so. Senator McDougall.
Cathaoirleach, I'm merely saying this. We are putting unnecessary pressure on ourselves not to have votes, to curtail discussion and all the rest of it, due to social distancing
If we
and public...
had got agreement in relation to the proposals that were being put forward, we could be sitting for 2 days. We couldn't get agreement.
Chairman, for the third time, I am not talking about the education debate. I'm talking about the attempt today to rush through in 1 day without adequate consideration the criminal justice bill which is before us. And I'm not talking about the education statements at all. I'm saying I object.
As am I. I'm talking about...
Well, sorry, you keep raising it every time I speak. You keep saying...
I didn't talk
You've
about
raised
the
it 3
education.
times. You've said that, that yesterday and today various things could have happened.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about
we could
today.
have taken second stage yesterday and committee and report stage today. And fine.
And no votes. And no vote on
You could have had votes because we'd been in this chamber.
on second stage.
On second stage, we could have delayed the votes until today.
No.
Which is done in the Dáil by arrangement. We couldn't get arrangement. That's why we're doing it today.
And that is all part
It's about agreement.
That's all part of a plan
It's
to get this bill rushed through into legislation and not adequately
No,
considered.
can I just-
It's a phony urgency that attaches to this bill, and for that reason, I am not content to agree to the order of
That's
business.
fair enough. Can I just outline to the House one more time? There was a lot of effort put in over the last couple of weeks to try and get agreement that we would sit for 2 days. But on one of those days, we could not have votes because we did not have arrangements to sit in the Shannon chamber and have votes at the same time. And we couldn't get agreement among the House. And we can only do it safely by agreement. And that is why we didn't sit yesterday, as had been proposed, and today, as had been proposed. So that is why the business is confined to today as it stands. Could I call on Senator Neil O'Donnell?